Hey, it's your tutor Courtney Waterman, lover of anime, manga, and math. And this is another session of Tutor Me Senpai. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Courtney, and this is another session of Tutor Me Senpai. Today we're going to be going into an 11th grade topic dealing with composite functions. Now, if you've never heard of a composite function, don't worry. As long as you know how to use regular functions, I'm sure you'll be able to tackle and even demolish these composite functions. Now, before we jump into our question, I would like to just give you a quick reminder that if you have any comments, concerns, or questions about whatever we see here, or even your own homework, visit me on Facebook at Tutor Me Senpai, or you can visit the link that I'll put in the description today. Now, without further ado, let us get into our question. So our question for today has these two functions, f of x equaling the square root of x plus 3, g of x equaling 2x, and they want us to find what this equals. Now, before we get into plugging in a number, in this case 4, I want us to focus on just how the function will look. So I'm going to rewrite this as something of x. So instead of having the 4, we're going to use x. And then we'll plug in the 4 for every x afterwards. Now, this may look a little confusing if you're not used to this notation, but all this is saying is do this, f of g of x. These two are the same. If you're wondering how I got this from this, just take a note of the placements, all right? Which one is closer to x, f or g? G. G is closer to x, right? So this is saying, okay, if g is closer to x, this is the first function we're going to pay attention to, right? And this little circle here is just saying we're going to do this function of x. Since g is closer to x, we'll first find g of x, and then we're going to take that g of x, plug it into our f, and that's how I get this. If you had g f here like this, f would be closer this time, so we first find f of x and then take g of all of that. So these two would be the same. Okay? So whatever one's closer, that function is going to be your inside function, and the one on the outside is going to be your outside function. All right? You see here, the inside function is f, right? And the outside function is g. Here, the inside function is g, and the outside function is f. So if we're going to start here, let us find what g of x is. So g of x is that, 2 of x. We already know what that was, okay? And our f of x is that. So in order to find out what this f of g of x is, we're going to have to plug in or substitute g of x for any place you have an x for this regular function f. So remember, our regular function was square root of x plus 3. F of g of x is telling us to plug in the value of g of x, which is 2x, anywhere we have an x. So in this case, instead of x plus 3, it's going to be 2x plus 3. You see, this whole thing used to be an x, but we're going to substitute g of x for that x, and we know that g of x equals 2x. So now that we know what our f of g of x is, we have to finish our question by plugging in 4. So this is going to be f of g of 4, which means wherever we're going to have an x in this final answer, we're going to plug in a 4. And what's 2 times 4? 8 plus 3, 11. So this is just the square root of 11. So you see, we went from having two functions. Deciphering what this means, this might be a little confusing, but you can easily rewrite it this way, and it's the same thing. We focus on x first to get how the function will look, and then we plug in our value of x later. This tells us that first we need to find out what our g of x is and our f of x, and then we can, using this way of seeing the formula, plug in our g of x as the inside function into our f of x. So now we've gotten the final function and how it looks. The final step would be to plug in 4 any place we have in x. By doing that, we get 11 under the square root, and our final answer is the square root of 11. And if you look back at our question, you'll see that the square root of 11 is b. So our answer for this question is b, the square root of 11. So that concludes another session of Tutor Me Senpai. Today we tackled an 11th grade topic, composite functions. And that's just taking two functions and doing one of the other. It's not much more difficult than that. So if you know how to use a regular function, we're just going to plug in one function into the other and you'll get your composite function. The biggest thing is just taking your time and identifying which one's the inside function and which one's the outside function. I hope today's video is easy for you to follow, but if you have any questions at all, feel free to put them in the comments below. Or you can visit me on Facebook at Tutor Me Senpai. And once again, I'll put that link in the description below. If you found today's topics a little bit more difficult than you would have expected, don't worry. I want you to practice, practice, practice. Go over the video once, twice, maybe even 3 times just to make sure you understand, because these are going to be valuable building blocks for the future. You can do it, and I know that you can. If you found this video helpful, why don't you leave me a like? Hit that notification bell so you know exactly when I drop my next video, and also subscribe so you can see much more of these every week. That's all the time I have for today. I really hope this helped you your homework, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. I'm Courtney, and this is another session of Tutor Me Senpai.